Hello, Lake Travis students. We are so excited to be with you here today. I'm here with Richard and with Kyle from River in the Hills Church and from Lakeway Church, and we are really excited to be with you today to talk about what God has on our hearts for you guys and to come together just as a group of churches to talk about Jesus and celebrate what he's done in our lives. So today we're talking about a subject of terms and conditions. And basically what those are, you may have seen them on your phone or on a different website when you're signing up for the first time. You may see things like you need to accept this list of documents before you continue. And something that I think is kind of crazy about that is that in that fine print of all the hundreds of pages that these companies ask you to read, supposedly, that we all definitely read, right? I know Instagram's is about 5,000 words, but in just about all of them, there's a term in there that says subject to change, which means this deal that we're setting forth with you, the agreement that we're entering into is actually not the final agreement. And we have the right to change things on you at any time. And I know it's really crazy, and something that we've really been talking about is that's kind of how life is, though. Like, we have this list of expectations of how things are going to be and how we want things to play out. We have in mind the college that we want to go to, how we want to get there, the clubs that we need to be a part of. And through all of that, life oftentimes, if not always, throws curveballs in it, and the terms and conditions change. So I don't, Richard, has there been any time in your life that you can think of that would have been something like that?
Man, yeah. Actually, my aunt passed away when I was in college. We were really close, and it just sort of hit us pretty hard to kind of get that news. And so to have to kind of work with my family through that and to figure out what it meant to live kind of without her in my life was pretty hard. And it was a pretty big change that me and my family had to walk through. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, things change all the time, and we are not ready for them all the time. I know in my life, I played football in high school, and that was my thing. And my sophomore year, I broke my back, and I was taken out of the one thing that was my consistent thing that kind of kept me grounded. That was the one thing that I really cared about a lot, and it was gone. And life just threw a curveball, and it's all different. Luckily, the Bible actually does have a lot to say about that, about how things do change all the time, but there are ways to get through that. And I know, Kyle, you had some things on your heart about that. You want to share with the group?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, the Bible, I've just found it to have every answer in the world for us in this life and for the life to come. The Bible is so relevant to our lives, and just a few verses that I think really speak towards this idea of change that came to my heart. One is from Hebrews 13:8, and it says, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And just the idea that Jesus is constant, he's faithful, he never changes. The Bible gives us the remedy for when things are shaking and shifting and changing. Circumstances around us are unpredictable, unexpected. We have someone to go to who's unchanging, who's faithful, who's constant, who's the same yesterday, the same today, and the same forever. So for me, even the Psalm 46 reality that God is a very present help, a moment-by-moment help in times of trouble or in times of change, brings my heart so much peace that I can go to him moment by moment, change by change, shift by shift in this world, knowing that he's going to be the same God to me, the same merciful God, the same loving God, the same kind God to me, the same shepherd to me that he always has been and that he always will be. So for me, the moment-by-moment, unchanging God that I can go to and that I have access to is what brings me peace when I even think about the very real reality that things are going to change. That is promised for us in this life, even scripturally. Things are going to radically change. Even as the time draws nearer and nearer to the return of the Lord, things are going to radically shift and radically change. And we have to, as young people, y'all are younger than us, but even us in our 20s and 30, we have to know, we have to learn, we have to cultivate how we go to this God who never changes. And that's the journey, the beauty of our relationship with Jesus, is that we grow in that relationship and we know that he has a promise for us, that he won't give us more than we can handle. But with every temptation, with every change, with every shift, he'll provide a way of escape. And so for me, that brings my heart so much peace, that he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. I can go to him. He's constant during any change or any transition in my life.
Man, that's so good. And something that we talk about here all the time is that while life changes, God doesn't. Yeah. And I love the illustration that verse uses, that Jesus Christ himself is the same yesterday and today and forever. Like, it's consistent. And I know me and you were talking about before the shoot that Joshua is a really great illustration of this idea. And I think our students would love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, awesome, for sure. So with Joshua, it seems like you're coming out of when Moses is leading the Israelite people, and he's been their main leader for all of their time after Egypt. And so that's who they know. That's the one guy they have to go to. That's the one guy they send to meet with God. And then all of a sudden, when he's gone, they have Joshua. And so you can imagine as Joshua is experiencing this wicked change, right? Like, he doesn't know what, and he's probably scared. And so in Joshua 1, it talks about in verse 6, it says, "Be strong and courageous." It's the Lord speaking to Joshua, just reminding him things are changing, things are new, things are going to be different. But that doesn't mean they're bad. That means that I am still the same God. And that's how he always intros himself. He's like, I am still this God that I've always been. Nothing is different. I have not changed. I am still God. And seeing him walk through that and how he leads the Israelite people from city to city and into the new promised land and delivers them to that, I think is just such a powerful example of the Lord being consistent, exactly like Kyle said, being just a solid rock. So I find a lot of joy in that. And it's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I think another great example is actually when Jesus came around, things changed radically. Yeah, right?
For sure.
And the like for the Hebrew people, especially, who had been following God for thousands of years, their ancestors, every one of them, they had all these rules, they had all these regulations, a certain way of life. And Jesus came around and said, here's a different way that I want you to live by. And it actually started with just 10 commandments, and it grew eventually to over 600.
Yeah.
And I mean, we think of rules as like something that's real strict, we got to keep to, like not necessarily a great thing, but this was their way of life. It was their routine. It was the way they did things. And Jesus comes along and turns over 600 laws into one relationship. That relationship with Jesus. And I think that that's super powerful for us, and it's so freeing that we don't have to measure up to a standard that we can never have to again. But for those people, it was, my way of life is completely changing. Like, the way I worship is completely different. I don't have to go to a temple to be in a relationship with God. That the priests, who were one of the very few people who could actually go in and experience the presence of God, that was available to everybody now.
Yeah.
And I think that for them, that was a huge change up. So there was a letter written to the Jewish believers who had come to know Christ and had changed from being Jewish to being Christian. And there was a letter written to them called Hebrews. Yeah. And in that, the author is basically navigating them through the transition that goes from the old into the new. And he said, yes, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And then, but he also says, and I want you to hear this, is be satisfied with what you have. For God has said, I will never fail you. I will never abandon you. And he says that in Hebrews 13:5. And I think that is so, so powerful, where it's like the situation is changing. Your routine is completely different than you would have ever thought a couple of years ago. Like, you would have never seen this coming. Everything is completely different, which I know none of us can relate to, right? I mean, obviously I'm joking. We can all relate to some major changes in our life. And the author of Hebrews is just saying, that God will never fail you, no matter what the situation is. I want you to focus on me instead of the circumstances that are around you that are changing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's another huge thing in Matthew that he talks about in Matthew 6, where he says, don't be anxious about anything. And ultimately, he goes on this long speech about how you cannot be anxious. It's ultimately because you know that you're seeking first the kingdom of God in Matthew 6:33. And if you're doing that, everything else is going to kind of fall into place. And I think that is like a major lesson also in times of change, just of how to rely on the Lord and be like, as long as this is my guiding stone, as long as this is the thing that I'm focused on, there is nothing to be worried about. It may seem like there is, but ultimately we know that God, like, we are supported by the God of the universe. And that's wild. And that's fun.
Wow. That's so good. So students, we're going to keep this conversation going throughout the week. We want you to reach out to the people in your community and to talk about what's going on in your life, what's changing, how to focus on the things that don't change. And we're keeping that going through small groups that meet throughout the week. I know here at ACF we're meeting through Zoom, and we're doing all kinds of stuff throughout the week to connect and to establish that community and really just help spend this time learning and growing and focusing on God. So you can find all of our different resources and the things that we're doing to connect with each other online. It'll be in the description of this video. And I'm really excited to get to meet with you guys this week.
Yeah. Thank you. It's been a blast.
Awesome. Thank you. We love y'all.
Yeah. We'll see y'all next week.